Airport with no flight paths is reminiscent of the famous episode of Yes Minister where you had the hospital with no patients. It might sound good, but as far as residents are concerned, the one thing we want to know about is who's going to be impacted and by how much. This is a crazy plan. It needs to stop. There should be no airport at Western Sydney.
I'm seriously concerned about the pollution in Sydney Basin. We've just had 2 weeks of air pollution and we're going to put a 24-hour airport right on the edge of Western Sydney.
There's no question that Australia and indeed Sydney and New South Wales needs infrastructure, but it's got to be smart infrastructure. Smart infrastructure would be a fast rail along the east coast and not a second airport in the Western Sydney Basin, which is Australia's aspect capital.
Air quality is important to me and my family, and the Western Sydney Airport will increase the poor air quality in the city. We deserve the same as all of Sydney, and Western Sydney seems to be of lower class because our air quality is poorer and we will have 24/7 planes over our heads. I don't want that for my family, and I don't want that for yours either.
Excellent.
I teach in a school in the Blue Mountains, and I'm just worried about all these flights if the airport goes ahead. The kids learning, blokes on high school, the noise, the disruption. What are we to do? Close all the windows? Make the rooms hotter? Make them more uncomfortable and more difficult to learn? The public schools as well, the private schools, all the schools that will be impacted. It's just crazy.
Look, I'd like to make a comment about this forum on Western Sydney Airport. It's supposed to be a community forum and they run the thing like a secret society. There is no public scrutiny. Nobody from the general public are allowed to attend their secret meetings, and it's just a mouthpiece for the government policy to build the airport. So there is an inequitable representation of people on that forum, and my particular opinion is that it's totally irrelevant now because they don't achieve anything.
There are many, many reasons why this airport shouldn't go ahead. One of the biggest ones is the noise. People of the West are going to have to put up with 24 hours a day, noise over their heads, never-ending sleep deprivation. We know what it's like when we've got a baby waking up through the night, how you feel the next morning.
Now, I'm a scientist of more than 20 years. I have a PhD in medicine, so I know what I'm talking about when it comes to research. And having read the EIS, I can tell you that it makes claims that are unsubstantiated. It provides no evidence whatsoever for most of its conclusions, and it actually made up data. It made measurements on noise, and then the relative increase was going to be too high to be acceptable, so they didn't use that, and instead they made up a more acceptable number. As far as I'm concerned, that's scientific fraud, and if I did that, I'd be a pariah and kicked out of science forever.
Look, how can they tell us? How can they tell us and design an airport, tell us where the terminals will be and located, tell us where the runway is located, and start building it, and yet not tell us where the flight paths are? What are they trying to hide? Are they just going to treat us like monks?
The first government information forum I attended, a consultant told me there was going to be a jobs bonanza. Oh, so that's interesting. How many of these jobs will be full-time? Ah, yes, she said, well, under construction there's going to be 11,000 jobs. Really? How do you arrive at that? They'll be running one another over. Oh no, she said, in the first year there's 1,000, in the next year there's 1,000, and so on. Oh, I said, so there's 1,000 jobs. No, that's 11,000 jobs. Straight, I said, that's amazing. So I said, you know, during my working life, I had one job lasted for 10 years, and one job lasted for 25 years. Most normal people would say, oh, in 35 years I had 2 jobs. Using their formula, I had 35 jobs. I'm amazed.
Right, the decision to build this airport has been based on misinformation. And how did I know that? Because my colleague, Dr. Anchage, and I have done a study that conclusively shows that the noise levels that they've stated are totally wrong.
We're at the base of the Blue Mountains, which is a United Nations World Heritage Area. We're going to have planes probably flying over this region. We're going to have planes flying over the Warragamba Dam. And talking about the dam, where is the water coming from for this aerotropolis?
It's been said by many members here that obviously this is a giant deceit on the public. The way they've interfered with their own statutes, the councils and the governments, right? It makes me wonder if all this interference with regulations and statutes to force through the preparation and the construction aren't actually now under illegal contracts. The government's been doing this a lot lately. Thank you.
We believe that this government doesn't believe in climate change, but I think it secretly does, and I also believe that that's the reason why they want to put an airport out in the west, because by 2040 or 2050 Kingsford Smith is going to be underwater. That's the reason.
I hope.
Sydney Basin is already subject to toxic air pollution levels, as can be seen by the recent bushfires. Sydney Basin concentrates toxic air, and with the airport this toxic condition is going to be accentuated, and the people of Western Sydney just don't realise now what they're going to be putting themselves through with air pollution.
The proposal to locate an airport at the back of the Sydney Basin, where it is known that air pollution from vehicle emissions collects and circulates, and air pollution has health impacts on residents, is an act of criminal negligence by both state and federal governments.
It's a 24/7 airport, so how are we going to sleep? How is it going to affect young kids at school if they're being woken up at night by planes, if they're being disturbed in class by planes? It just, there's nothing good about it, really.
Absolutely. Okay, I'd like to send a message to the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition in relation to a curfew and a movement cap at Western Sydney Airport. There is one at Kingsford Smith Airport, and back in 1994 the population revolted because of the noise. So the politicians introduced a curfew at Kingsford Smith. We want nothing less out at Badgerys Creek, out at Western Sydney Airport, and we need a legislated curfew and movement cap that cannot be changed and will be legislative protection for the communities that live under flight paths.
Here, here.